So really excited for the next set of sessions here. We're gonna dive first really deeply into some amazingly interesting research. We'll be joined on stage in just a moment by Christina Jenkins, who is a LinkedIn employee who heads up our insights team in Europe, and Nyhan, who's a leader at Kantar, who oversees a number of different areas of research and is going to help pull out some of these insights from us. And this is high on the list of things I think you're going to walk away with today that are going to inform how you do things differently later. So it's a pen and pencils moment. And then I'm going to come back on the stage, and we're going to have a panel. We're going to talk all about some real-world experiences about how social and the landscape around our business environment is changing. And we're going to hear from 4 folks who are living this right now and ideally sharing some very practical stories from their lives, and then hearing from you some questions about how we can go through this evolution together. So with no further ado, I'd love to welcome to the stage Christina and Nick. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. As Mike said, I'm Christina Jenkins, and I lead the LinkedIn Insights team in EMEA, based in London. And I'm actually thrilled to have Nyhan here with me today, representing Kantar and TNS, to talk a little bit about some brand new research that just came out. The Mindset Divide, which is a global research study that, as I mentioned, was just released, where we looked at how people were using different social media sites, what they were thinking, what they were feeling, and what kind of content did they want. We actually partnered with TNS to do this research across 12 different countries. So we have had a huge number of respondents. We actually interviewed more than 6,000 people in 12 countries and included our focus groups with that as well to really tease out what is the mindset that people are in. And as you can see from the title, how does emotion come into play when we're comparing personal to professional networks? We're going to talk about 3 key highlights. If you take your pen and pencil moment, as Mike just said, these are the 3 key things that we want you to take away today. The first insight that came from the research was that actually emotion plays a huge role in how people are using social networks. This is particularly surprising with how people use professional networks, because I don't think professionals, and when you're thinking about targeting professionals, it's not something that automatically comes to mind that you're going to tap into this emotion. But the research actually showed that people were thinking and feeling in a very aspirational mindset, and they're looking to achieve things. It was about being on professional networks is about improving yourself. So the first thing is about this power of emotion that we saw. Emotion also drives me to our second takeaway, which is the mindset that people are in. And people are in very different mindsets when they're using personal networks compared to professional. You heard in David's presentation about this idea of spending time versus invest time. That actually came out of this study, where people are spending time on personal networks, but on professional networks, they're actually investing their time. They're looking to get something back in the future. And it's about this opportunity that professional networking presents. And the third key finding is actually that people want to hear from brands on professional networks. There was this receptivity and this openness to hear what companies and brands are saying on professional networks, which was much bigger than what we saw on personal networks. And that wasn't something that we necessarily expected to see. So pretty great news for those of us who want to be talking to people in this aspirational mindset on professional networks.
Right, so I've been doing research studies for 20 years for publishers and agencies and big advertisers. And good research presentations are usually the shorter ones, don't have a lot of numbers in them, but have a clear story, and that there's a little bit of a surprise in there. And I'm happy to say we're going to do 3 for 3 on that, because we're only going to talk for about 12 minutes. There's not a lot of numbers. And as Christina alluded to, there are some surprises in here. And the surprises are basically what we're going to talk about now. This idea that emotion could be something in LinkedIn or behind the work and the effort that people put into LinkedIn. I don't think it's what most people would think of when they think of LinkedIn. They don't think of perhaps emotion. And this study was about professional networks overall. It wasn't just about LinkedIn, but obviously LinkedIn wanted to see this explored. We were surprised at the extent to which emotion played a role in both professional networks and social networks. And I think, in some ways we shouldn't be surprised, because just because you put on a suit in the morning, does that mean you've turned off your emotions? I mean, you might know some bosses who you think do that. But then when you think about it, you really think, well, the reason they're such a jerk is they're so emotionally insecure. So we put on these suits, we get dressed in the morning, we go out to do our thing. We don't turn off our emotions. So why wouldn't we think of professional networks as emotional networks? I don't really have to tell you about social networks, because I know you know them, and I know you use them, and you enjoy them, because they're fun. They're lighthearted, they're distracting, they're actually a break, often, from sort of the real work you got to do. And they're a little frivolous. At times, that's kind of nice. It's also a little bit nostalgic. What are my friends doing? My buddies from before, from school. What happened last weekend that I missed? Oh, remember that vacation? It's powerful, but it's also very different. It's very nostalgic and backward-looking, reminiscing, having fun, that time. And that's good stuff. But that's different than the professional side. And the difference is profound and also very powerful. On the professional side, and the bullet point, the bold letters really sum it up, it's about a purpose and about having an aspiration, and as Christina and others have said, investing time. Investing is a critical word. You don't invest money, you don't invest time in things without some sort of emotional check-off in your mind, like, should I be doing this? Is this a waste of time? Is this going to help? These aspirational qualities inherent in this are things that brands aspire to. And they want to show that they're helping people achieve their goals. Now, I would say, when I think of LinkedIn and a type of advertiser, I would say P&G wouldn't come top of mind. But in fact, P&G, their mantra is improving lives. Yeah, they sell soap, they sell toothpaste, they sell potato chips, but their mantra and their culture is improving lives, and that's what they want their brand managers to feel. That's about aspirations. The Thank You Mom campaign in the Olympics, hugely emotional. That was about thanking moms who helped these Olympic athletes achieve something. They aspired, they achieved. Thank you, Mom. That's aspirational advertising. And that should be the kind of stuff that these advertisers could leverage professional networks for, if they're smart about tapping into it. Tapping into what? Yes, we know the top of the iceberg is about jobs and networking, and that's clearly established, and LinkedIn and others do that miraculously well. They brought that to a new level. But then there's the bottom of this iceberg, which is all this word cloud stuff here. Happiness, progress, achievement, even some of these that are not in white. Recognition. I mean, you talk about the phenomenal success of these endorsements. I got a couple of endorsements yesterday. You know what? That made me emotionally happy. It was like out of the blue. Someone sent me a Hallmark card that says, I like you. You're good. And I want other people to know that you're good. That's an emotional reaction for me. That's powerful. So these are the things that are lying underneath the surface here. And that's something that advertisers, including some of the advertisers that I work with in my WPP Kantar world, that I think are just now starting to realize. I'm going to just turn it back to you, but I just want to sort of close and say, again, thinking about your first job or your first raise or that thing that you achieved something professionally, how emotional was that? And if LinkedIn and others are a vehicle for that, then the advertising community, and this research I think helps establish that, should tap into that emotion.
Just building on the emotion and then the second key finding around mindset, you can see from the slide here the mindset of what people are looking to do on social networks compared to professional networks is very different. It's obvious, right? People on social networks are socializing, they're keeping in touch, they want to be entertained. In some cases, they're actually killing time. They're on the bus waiting to go, or at the bus stop waiting to go somewhere, and they're on Facebook just looking and seeing what kind of content is there. They might be thinking about sharing content, sharing photos. As Nick mentioned, it's much more about reminiscing and being in the moment when people are on social networks as compared to professional networks, which is much more action-orientated. It's about investing time and thinking about what you're going to get back. So you can see all the drivers for why people use professional networks are action. They're maintaining their professional identity. They're making useful contacts. They're even searching for new opportunities. How can we think about tapping in as brands and marketers to that type of mindset? And that's really what we want to do is show that people are thinking differently on social media. Not all social media is created exactly the same, but it's about tapping into that mindset and understanding what people want so we can provide them with relevant message. The last key finding that we mentioned is this idea that people want to hear from brands on professional networks. We actually asked people, what are the top 3 types of content that you want to hear from? And on social networks, they want to hear from friends and family. They want to hear about the latest movie that's coming out or what's going on with their band or what kind of music do they like. They're spending time. On professional networks, they're actually thinking about their career and how to actually improve themselves and how can they be better at their job. Professionals are hungry for insight. That's why we're all here today, to learn something new and meet someone new. But updates on brands, I think, is particularly important because there's this willingness for people on professional networks to hear what the latest news and information is. And that's something that we did not actually set out to see in this study. We wanted to look at the mindset, but that's a pretty powerful finding when you think about tapping into that.
Yeah, and in other research and conversation with advertisers, they're constantly trying to find the balance between interrupting someone to get the message across in a visual, compelling, engaging way, and not pissing people off because they're so interruptive. And we know that's the game of advertising. And advertisers don't just want to sell, they want to serve, and they want to help you share. Again, P&G wants to not just sell, they want to help you share and serve. So the fact that there's this higher level of receptivity to having a brand conversation or having information come from a brand on this, I think is important for any advertiser to say, okay, the mindset here is that they're more willing to hear from me versus what they're doing on social networks. That's a big deal. That little piece of willingness to be open is a big deal.
So thinking about how brands can leverage this opportunity, I'll share one case study with you, which was actually from the UK for Mercedes. Mercedes was actually facing quite a tough competitive market in the luxury car space. And they were relaunching their C-Class car, and they were making 2,000 improvements to the car. And they came to LinkedIn and they said, how can we think about partnering on this particular kind of awareness initiative? We want to tell people that we're making these improvements to the car, and we also want to change their perceptions about it. And I think this is a great example of Mercedes being mindful of the types of things that people want on LinkedIn. We actually incorporated into the advertising what we called in-tips. Different tips that people could take away about improving themselves professionally. It was about how to make their profile stand out. It was what kind of skills should they include. And they actually drew people in by getting them to follow Mercedes by sharing these in-tips with them about improving themselves. I think this is a great example of thinking about what kind of content people want to get from professional sites and tapping into that to make the advertising more relevant. It was the tone that they took when they were talking to people on professional sites, which is so different to maybe the tone you might take if you're talking to people on social media sites. And really, lastly, just thinking about how can we actually take some of these key findings, these 3 key findings that we've talked about, and apply them to match our marketing to the mindset. The first takeaway is I think, kind of an obvious one. It's about recognizing that people are doing different things, whether they're on social platforms or professional platforms. They're thinking about different things, and that affects what they want to see and hear. That affects the content that they want to see and hear. The second key takeaway, I would say, for thinking about marketing to the right mindset is aligning your brand with emotion. And that's really what Nick was talking about there, this idea that you want to tap into this aspirational mindset and this emotion that people are thinking and feeling. And the last takeaway is around framing how your brand can provide users with information so they get the knowledge and they get the insights that they want to see on professional platforms. They're hungry for it. They want to hear from brands. How can you leverage the platform to give people the types of content that they want to think about?
And I think, you know, what you're doing is, with what we heard about this morning with the content, I was actually very interesting about the talk of the failure. I mean, part of the emotional driver behind, say, LinkedIn is your fear of failure. And now you have these super successful people talking about failure. Oh my God, I just like took that off my shoulders a little bit. And now, you know, the failure or the inadequacies I might be feeling in my professional life are maybe not so bad. Maybe they're actually good for me. That's like an emotional uplift for me during my day. And quite frankly, we need those. I need them. So I think the clever work you're doing is you're extending the ways that this can be tapped into. And that's why I'm very excited to be here. So I think you guys have a lot of good stuff going on. Luckily, this research supported it. It didn't have to, but it just turned out that way. And you know, and I have to say, I do a lot of work with CPGs and people that are not necessarily thinking about this stuff, and I think they'll be very interested in it.
Yeah, it's about thinking about that, that different mindset, thinking about the content that people want, and just recognizing that there is actually a difference in the types of interaction and engagement and almost relationships that people have on various platforms, especially when we're thinking about talking to people in this specific environment with the content that they want. So we'll leave you with those three key takeaways. And if you want to see the full results, you can go to LinkedIn/mindset and access the full copy of the details. But thank you very much. And thank you to Nick.
Yep. Thank you.